Thanks for watching The Thought Criminals, named after the resistance to the totalitarian thought police of George Orwell's 1984, which we now refer to as being woke. I'm your host, Rachel Alexander. I'm a weekly contributor to Townhall and other sites and the editor of Intellectual Conservative. And this is my mall, Ralph Benko, who worked in or with the Reagan, W. Bush, and Trump White Houses. He's a weekly columnist for Newsmax, co-author of the Capitalist Manifesto, and co-founder and executive chairman of the 187,000-member Capitalist League Facebook group. And you can find all of this at thoughtcriminals.ning.com. Today, we're going to be discussing some of the posts there about wokeness, and we're also going to discuss an article I wrote for Town Hall on how I have figured out what the left is really about, how they come up with their positions on issues, at least today in the modern era. What I have figured out, and we've both been involved in politics for many years, and this comes from a lot of observations and, talking to my lefty friend all day long for the last 4 years. The left bases their positions on hating key figures on the right, especially key figures on the right that they find very divisive, polarizing. And so they formulate their views of everything on the right based on this hatred of just a few people. And so they settle on left-wing positions as like the default. So it's kind of a reactionary philosophy. If Marjorie Taylor Greene is zealously pro-life, then they're going to be pro-choice. If Josh Hawley is zealously, talking about problems with the elections, then they're going to say there's absolutely no problems with the elections. And we've seen this with Trump more than anything. Talk to anyone on the left about their positions, and they will, slip into this conversation about how terrible Trump is and how he needs to be prosecuted, and he's just so sleazy with women and da 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 da. But you can't get them to talk about the Biden administration. You can't get them to talk about the Democrats controlling Congress. They're in control of 2 branches of government right now, and they will not talk about that. For them, it's just bad-mouthing people on the right. They want to throw the baby out with the bathwater because they see a few of the problems with capitalism. Because capitalism is not perfection. It's not the Bible. There's not everything's going to be perfect. There's going to be some things that are negative. They want to throw it all out. And I don't know about you guys, but I am frankly sick and tired of being labeled a racist and a white supremacist because I might happen to agree with somebody who might not be so eloquent like Marjorie Taylor Greene. We might come down on the same side of the fence, but you know what? She does not represent all people on the right. My idol is William F. Buckley Jr., who is extremely well-spoken, and you won't ever hear the left going after him because they don't want to admit that that actually represents the best of what we've got on the right. And people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, they aspire to be more like William F. Buckley Jr., but for whatever reason, they're not. So
wait, let me just interject, because she's a moron. So that's that. When you say for whatever reason, it's because MTG is a moron, whereas William F. Buckley Jr. was a genius. And by the way, did you get the book of his collected essays that I mailed you about a month ago, and that you graciously never thanked me for?
This is the 3rd time you have brought that up. What are you talking about? Both other times I told you I got it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm waiting for the big wet thank you kiss, Rachel. And so
well,
far,
if that was what you were expecting, no wonder you never think you heard back.
Oh, damn it. Darn it. Okay. You sexist. Okay. Go on.
Okay. Well, I was just coming to a conclusion, which is that you can't sit there and troll fringe people on the right and declare that they represent all of us. My lefty friend literally trolls a bunch of extremist people on the right on Telegram, and then he just posts about it to everybody and just, constantly says, this is what your girl's doing now. This is where your party's, going now. Trump is going to, and they always predict the worst things, and they never even happen. They always say Trump's going to be in prison, your girl's going to be in prison, and none of it ever pans out. I mean, I've been following my lefty friends' predictions for 4 years now, and none of it ever happens, and then they just forget about it. They just shove it under the rug and pretend like it never even happened. Pretend like they never made all these wild predictions.
And your point, Rachel, is actually, I'm more interested in making my point, which is we should be more like them. Okay, they're following Alinsky rule number 5, which is incredibly powerful, which is to say ridicule is man's most powerful record. It discombobulates there's no way to counter it, and it discombobulates and forces into unforced errors. I'm paraphrasing here. Please forgive me, Saul. But they are very proficient at using Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, which are tactical rules. As you know better than most, Rachel, Saul was a libertarian. He was not a leftist.
A left libertarian.
He was not a left libertarian. He was a pure.
He hated right.
He was an anti-big government, anti-discriminatory corporation, a fighter for justice, but not a social justice warrior. Okay, he disdained the social justice warriors of his day. So the point is, every right-wing nut like you and me should go to the internet and order a copy of Rules for Radicals from Amazon, or download a free PDF of Rules for Radicals. With there are bootleg copies running everywhere, and all of our faux conservative kinos, conservative name only, who are willing to violate Saul's copyright.
Oh, I bought the real book because I wanted to see the so-called dedication to Satan. And we don't need to go into that because we got into that just last week.
It was an epigram to Lucifer, not a dedication to Satan. I have a hardcover copy of the first edition of Rules for Radicals dedicated to Irene McGinnis. May she rest in peace. She passed on about 2 years ago. And she inscribed my copy of Rules for Radicals. Actually, I have 2 hardcover copies of Rules for Radicals inscribed to me by Irene McGinnis. Irene, dedicated to Irene. I'm sorry to hit you with true news when false news is so much more gratifying, but it's not dedicated to.
I've reported on this exact fact in many articles in the past and clarified exactly what he said to the devil or whatever you want to call it at the beginning.
No, Lucifer. Lucifer
was not the devil. News to me. I know exactly what he wrote about the devil in the beginning of the book.
So, Rachel, your Newsweek, your Town Hall column this week was among your very best. It was lucid, it was brilliant, it was inspired. And for people who happen to have missed it, I really recommend that they Google Rachel Alexander Town Hall and go and take a read of it, because it's magnificent. The only thing that you missed is that you're absolutely right. You've nailed the left dead to rights. But instead of simply saying, shame, shame, shame left, I wish you had said, hey, right, take a clue, appropriate their tactics, as opposed to, they're shameless, as opposed to trying to shame them for dirty pool.
In a lot of my articles I write like that, I do say that back, that we should use the left's tactics back, not the lies and, the really dishonest stuff.
Saul never lied. I'm sorry.
You and I have had this argument before. He said that he came up with a protest on a anniversary day.
I know. He occasionally.
Like he really came up with that. It was an accident.
No, it was not an accident. It was not a lie. It was a fib. It was like Donald Trump talking about the big lie of elections.
Don't even go there.
That was just a little fib. Okay, so
we've had that out before. I don't even want to go there right now.
If you love Donald Trump,
a little fib.
You have to love Saul Alinsky. They're very, very much alike. So,
as I was trying to say before you interrupted me, I am limited to 1,000 words in my columns. And so a lot of the reason why I leave out, hey, we need to use these tactics ourselves, is because I don't have any more room. And I have written many articles urging conservatives to use those type of tactics. So I just can't.
Not those type of tactics, those tactics, they are definitive. Rules for radicals. If you don't, if our viewers are too indolent to actually either go to Amazon and buy a copy, or Barnes and Noble if they don't like Amazon, or to pirate a copy from the internet because they're floating around as free PDFs, okay, then all I want them to do is go to Wikipedia, read the 13 Rules for Radicals, which are incredibly powerful political and policy tactics, and start to appropriate them culturally and use them. And one of them is rule number 5, which is ridicule is man's most potent record. The left uses ridicule against us all the time. High time for us to be using it against them.
And with that note, let's move on to our second topic, since I see we have only got about 9 minutes left. You've gone over some pretty outrageous woke incidents that have happened recently.
Yes, and well, it's actually even more interesting than that, Rachel, because you have some non-right-wing people who are attacking wokism as a bad thing. So you've got Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, who is no right-winger, who's closing 16 profitable Starbucks outlets, including that of Washington, D.C., because of woke policies being imposed by the governments of these cities that are creating. I mean, one of the Starbucks policies is that their restrooms are open to the public. They're not limited to Starbucks customers. Well, in woke cities like Washington and Seattle, Portland, I don't know, it's listed at thoughtcriminals.ning.com. Some of the profitable Starbucks they're closing have turned in the woke policies in these cities have turned their restrooms into drug parlors. And so, since there is no way of controlling what people do in those restrooms, Howard Schultz, the interim CEO, former CEO who built it up, interim CEO, is starting to shut down a significant number of Starbucks because of the woke policies that the mayors and governors of these woke states are imposing. That are making Starbucks outlets dangerous to their staff. So that was
what's interesting about that, Ralph? I just posted on Facebook a couple days ago about an incident my boyfriend had. He's Black. He dresses kind of like a hippie. He was at a Circle K a couple days ago, and he asked to use the restroom because he needed to wash his hands because he had given some water to a homeless person. And so the woman working there said the restrooms are closed. And then he observed a white man walk in right after him, preppy looking guy, asked for the key for the restroom, and the woman gave it to him immediately. And
I am thrilled that you, Rachel, as a thought leader in the vast right-wing conspiracy, are pointing to the systemic racism that we as conservatives are morally and politically obligated to go after. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, I just found that interesting because here obviously is a Circle K that is refusing to let somebody use their restroom because they perhaps worried he was really a homeless person. And you know what? They got away with it. Nothing happened to it. My boyfriend said he didn't want to go complain up the chain because it's just some poor lady who could lose her job, and he didn't want to, cause a scene. So, my point being, Starbucks could say, hey, we don't allow homeless people, but they are choosing not to do that. They are choosing not to have any form of discretion whatsoever.
Right, but it's not. they are attempting to be open and inclusive, and it's the politicians, the district attorneys, the mayors, the city councils, who are taking the position of like anything goes. So I believe, first of all, hey, that's wonderful of your boyfriend not to register a complaint in order not to get a team member, an employee who's just following policy or thinks she is, in trouble. So I think that's wonderful of him, but he's wrong. Okay, Starbucks reads all of its complaints online, and if he goes to the Starbucks website and registers a complaint, he can register it in terms of, I'm not looking for retribution, I'm not looking for anybody to be fired, but you have to improve your training process, your training protocols, so people of color are not discriminated against. So having experienced this himself, I wish he will change his mind and register a complaint, because they read it at headquarters and they take this kind of thing very seriously.
Well, and his incident happened at a Circle K, and it was he said it was actually an Indian woman who would not let him use the bathroom. So it's a very interesting situation. I just feel like Starbucks is not handling it the correct way by saying, oh, any drug dealer can come use our bathroom, not a customer.
Well, their position is they're open to the public and they're not limiting their bathroom to people who come in and buy a cup of coffee. I get that. I get that as a matter of business policy. I get that as a matter of PR. Okay, but there are some cities like Washington, D.C. that are not going after abusers, people who are not going after petty criminals, who are now using Starbucks as a place to ingest drugs, which is making the employees of Starbucks very nervous, because they feel that these people are a threat to them, and they're not wrong. So I was just in my posting at thoughtcriminals.ning.com, which I want our millions of viewers to go, billions to go and check out and sign up for. Okay, it's kind of like, okay, Howard Schultz, who is nobody's idea of a conservative, is now talking about some of the unanticipated, unwelcome impacts of woke policies. Woke policies are being rejected by the people of America. We, the people, of the people, for the people, okay, are rejecting woke policies across the board at the ballot box and in practice. So all I'm saying is that those who are propounding woke policies are they're prestigious, and they are relentless, and they are they have the big megaphones, okay, but they represent a teensy little minority. And so we who want to fight back against the totalitarianism called woke or called cancel culture, we have the high ground. We have the moral high ground. And the more we push back, the more we're going to win. So I'm encouraging our viewers to do whatever is in their power to push back against woke culture, because it's just a euphemism for totalitarianism.
And I just wanted to point out that I believe the distinction between, Starbucks letting anybody into their bathrooms versus what happened to my boyfriend comes down to training. If you,
right.
You've seen my boyfriend. He does not look like a homeless person. And so if you can just train somebody, he bought a water. He came in and he bought a water at the store. So, if you can just train your employees, hey, this is the difference between a hardcore drug addict versus somebody who's just actually, it's very stylish.
Versus a person of color. You're absolutely right. And by the way, that training is would be a wonderful thing to have in terms of both eradicating systemic racism that unfortunately is part of our culture, but doing it in a non-punitive way doing it in a way that moves us forward in the John F. Kennedy sense of a rising tide lifts all boats.
All right,
Okay.
on that note, we got to end it. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week, Rachel.